I'm Peter Vaccarella. I'm a Director of Solutions Consulting with Appian. I'm presenting today along with Cindy Fernandes and Alice Way of University of South Florida. This is my 14th year at Appian, and I've really enjoyed the experience of seeing the product grow up. And I've worked with a lot of customers that are here at the conference this week. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed is just seeing Appian innovate. As mobile devices just started coming up and we were creating native applications for it, something that I've always found really interesting. And as part of the presentation today, what I'm going to do is outline some of the challenges currently facing organizations who are trying to undertake creating their own mobile applications. Some of those problems that are there in the marketplace right now, and then what Appian is doing to uniquely address those to make it easier for you folks to be able to design and develop your own custom applications. And then afterwards, Sidney and Alice are going to walk through some of the really cool stuff that they've built for their own students and faculty at University of South Florida to really take home the message of what I've got and then actually seeing it in action. So I wanted to start just by a quick poll of hands here. Who here are parents or perhaps have newborns or young children at home? Okay, actually a fair amount. So as many new parents can attest, and probably anybody who doesn't have kids but has ever sat next to one on an airplane or in a restaurant, keeping them quiet and calm is something that's extremely important for everybody and parents that are out there. And for most babies, the world is scary and there's a lot of new things to learn. And one of the tried and true methods to keep them quiet and calm is using a pacifier, which instincts a calming reflex inside the child, and it keeps them well. So as society has evolved, I think people have discovered kind of a new electronic version of the pacifier. And as you can see here, the baby has an iPhone out here, which works wonders and keeps the kid's attention forever. So same poll, how many parents out there are actually guilty of using the new electronic pacifier for their children? Okay, yeah, about a quarter of those that have come up. So this example is actually near and dear to my heart. I'm a first-time dad. I've got a newborn at home, a beautiful 7-week-old baby girl. And probably like most parents that are out there, when they first have a kid, my head is swimming with ideals that I'm always going to do this or never allow my kid to do that. And every parent that I've talked to has told me that, yeah, that's fine, but as soon as you have the kid and you get in the situation, yeah, that's all going to go out the window. So I found it interesting to see how my kids are going to grow up experiencing mobile devices. And recently, I was inside the supermarket waiting to buy something, and a woman was with her kid right in front of me, and she was waiting in line also. And she picked up a magazine just to pass the time and was kind of thumbing through it. And her kid, obviously interested in what mom was doing, looked over and saw that mom was looking at a picture of a woman with some text underneath. And the kid looked over and went to the image and started going like this. And then that didn't work, and he tried it again. And my jaw dropped, and I was really just stunned and thinking that my kid could grow up not understanding the difference between digital devices and print newspaper, that the same thing that you do in one couldn't work on the other. And it's fascinating and an eye-opening example of how mobile devices have really revolutionized so many aspects of society. And from the outside looking in, if in the enterprise we're able to create applications that are so easy that a kid could pick them up and immediately start working with them, well, that's perfect for our workforce. And surely lower training costs and higher productivity gains can be achieved. So everybody gets this, which is why demand for mobile applications is at an all-time high. If you're not currently today rolling out enterprise applications within your organization, you can rest assured that your competition is, and not just consumer-facing ones. In fact, application demand for employee, business partner, and general business operation mobile applications is the fastest growing space with the most interest. But this creates a problem. And that's because currently, right now, the demand for mobile applications is far outstripped by the available supply. And in fact, Gartner has found that the demand for enterprise mobile applications will outstrip available supply 5-to-1. That's scary. And if you've ever recently had to price out one of these applications, you may be experiencing some of the fallout from this. And the problem is really simple. With traditional mobile application development, you have the Very common example of supply and demand. The demand for mobile applications has never been higher, and the supply of mobile application developers who are familiar with Android Java or Apple Swift or Objective-C for iOS devices are very limited, and they tend to be very expensive. So you're going to end up paying about $100 to $300 an hour for that mobile developer, and that developer is probably going to take thousands of hours to complete out that application, which is pretty scary. And if it sounds bad, it actually gets worse. Because if you take a look at what actually goes into mobile application development, there's an ugly truth behind this demand. And that is that the consumer-facing application that you've already built is expensive. It's really expensive. In fact, if you take a look at mobile application development by the numbers, and this information is coming from RA Motion, which is a services provider specializing in custom mobile application development, they've broken down applications into 3 primary groups. Simple applications, those are very low effort. Perhaps you're just browsing out content. You've got medium complexity applications where you have a little bit of interactive behavior. Maybe you're entering in some data or authenticating some users or pushing some content out to end users. And then you've got high complexity applications. And those are one with very rich interaction. And you've got intensive graphics and very rich media. And so this can be obviously difficult to read. So if we take a closer look at that simple application that you've got for just browsing out can cost you anywhere from $25,000 to $37,000. If you want to have a little bit of interactivity, perhaps authenticating some users or entering in some data, you're looking at $114,000 to $171,000. And if you really want to create that very high control consumer-facing application, you're looking at a whopping $484,000 to $727,000. Now, maybe your chief marketing officer could justify such expenses for that really cool consumer-facing app that you developed. But could they still justify those same costs if you're working on a facilities inspection application or an employment management application, or perhaps an approval for expenditure application? Probably not. And on top of all this, that application that you just created might only be current for about a year. iOS and Android are rapidly evolving platforms, and there's no guarantee that the application that you create today is going to run on that next generation device or mobile operating system. In fact, the devices themselves are changing all the time and constantly evolving and coming out with new features like biometric security features or new NFC features or new geolocation features like beacons. And every time that that device comes up with new capabilities, you need to sit there and analyze and think about whether or not that you would like to incorporate that new functionality into your existing application. So as a general rule of thumb, the initial cost that you have of creating that mobile application, you're going to need to add about 20% to that to be able to make sure that you're keeping it up to date in maintenance. Things covering bug fixes, new operating system updates, security fixes, and incorporating those new capabilities into the device. So that application that you created that cost about $500,000 initially to create, you need to add on about another $100,000 every year just to ensure that it stays current. And if you think about all the demand within the enterprise for creating these types of general business operation applications, you can start to see how quickly those maintenance costs can add up and frankly be overwhelming. And there's a big gap here between the value that you can get out of creating all of these applications that your employees can use and take advantage of, and the overwhelming cost that it takes to not only create them, but then to keep them up to date. And for that reason, Appian has seen the market bifurcate into 2 main areas of high productivity or high control mobile applications and high productivity or low code mobile applications. So high control applications are those that have been typically done over the last decade with mobile application development. And they allow developers to have very precise control, very fit for purpose, pixel perfect graphics and screens to be able to generate that application. But that control comes with a cost, both in the time it takes to develop the application, as well as finding the actual resources who are capable and familiar with those high-control mobile application development platforms. By contrast, high productivity application platforms like Appian lower the barrier of entry for developers to be able to create their application, because products like Appian use very low-code, very visual composition tools to be able to create very functional applications that provide a lot of value. And so what we see is that in enterprises, that all of you should have a very healthy mix of high control and high productivity applications. So if you're creating a very specific consumer-facing application in which you need that high control ability, probably not creating Pokemon Go, but if you had that type of rich interaction and graphics that were in place, well, you probably wouldn't be designing an Appian if you hadn't already figured that out. But if you wanted to take advantage and roll out functionality for a lot of your back office operations or any of those types of applications like facilities inspection or employee management or approval for expenditure, you can take advantage of a platform like Appian to be able to very quickly and rapidly build out those applications without needing those developer resources. And you can even mix in a number of high control inputs to be able to have a little bit more interactivity with those mobile devices. And in just a second, Sidney and Alice will walk through some examples of these high productivity applications with a couple high control elements in there that you can see what they've done with their students and faculty. But before we get in, one quick plug for Appian 17.2 as part of our promise to ensure that we future-proof your mobile applications and take the burden of making sure that your applications stay current, stay secure, and stay modern. We're always coming out with new features that we're pushing out. In 17.2, we've got push notifications, so you can receive process and social tasks directly to your mobile device or tablet or Apple iWatch. So look for that in 17.2. And with that, I'll turn things over to Sidney and Alice to showcase what they've done in South Florida.
Thanks, Peter. Give me a second while I switch context here real quick. Okay, thank you. So before I start, I wanted to do a quick poll. I see a couple, I know at least one person from higher ed. How many higher ed folks in the room? I see an LSU jacket. So LSU and University of Maryland. Right? So welcome everyone. We started on our digital journey a while ago. And what I'm here to talk about is kind of where we're at. And then Alice is going to tell you how we got here. You can look at me kind of like the Vanna. I'm going to show you kind of all the cool stuff first. And then that's actually my job. I get to show the cool stuff. And then the folks in the front and Alice Way, who leads our digital innovation team, actually gets to do the work. So for once, you'll be able to see the person that actually has to do work, talk to you about it. But I want to start with who we are. We are the University of South Florida, USF for short, from the other Bay Area across on the East Coast. So USF always gets us confused when we come here. We are a fairly large university, what they call in Florida a metropolitan university, which means we have a student body that's very diverse. We have part of my portfolio is USF Health, which contains a lot of the colleges within USF Health. And both those are important as I walk through the applications. So January 2005, this is kind of when we dubiously call it the day Alice walked into my office. And I'm going to embarrass her a little. And she came to us and she said, well, gee, thanks for making me the director of digital innovations and now handing me the custom application development team. And what we had was hundreds of applications, both large and small. Some were high control, some weren't. Some were just forms on a website, but they all had this unique characteristic that was kind of a legacy of what Patrick was sitting here and I bequeathed Alice. They were all web-based for applications that were created in Cold Fusion. Remember that? Cold Fusion? Yeah. And we always wanted to move, to Python, .NET, but then we had this little thing called what's it called? Technical debt, right? And so that was going to be a problem. And so we had burned out programmers who were pretty much ready to rebel because all they were doing was trying to figure out how to get through that accumulated technical debt. And then I have one of my clients here, Sivar, who's here with me, and we had clients that said, what the heck are we paying you for if we are getting nothing new? All we get is the same old applications that you'll have out on the website, and you'll make minor tweaks. We're not getting value. We're not getting any ROI. And so we need a new way for developing apps and delivering applications. And so what happened, kind of bring our story kind of a little bit forward, what we were told we needed, because Patrick and I are kind of old, by our millennial directors who came in and said, we need something that's easy. We need something that's simple to build. We need it to be mobile. We need it to be able to be something that we can create very, very rapidly. Why was that important? Because we needed to show value to our clients. We wanted to move from, hey, we're going to have an application for you, so let's do about 3 months worth of what we would call, we sent our business analysts and we got business requirements. Then we spent another 3 months kind of prototyping, and then we spent another 3 months developing. Usually we kind of did Agile, but we did Agile in a way that the clients couldn't quite look under the covers and see what we were doing. And so I've heard that referred to as water scrum fall, I think is what it's referred to. And we kind of did that. And we convinced ourselves that we were Agile. And so what we needed was something that was an Agile platform that worked on all devices. And what that meant is, when you're a university, and my fellow higher ed folks that are in the room will know this, we can't go to the CFO and say, hey, we have this great new idea, give us more money. That just doesn't happen. That's probably not something that's unique to higher ed, but higher ed recently has been uniquely constrained by costs. And so we are kind of challenged with kind of this paradox where higher ed is changing very rapidly, while at the same time we have to deal with a generation of folks that may not have grown up kind of pinching screens, but that expect that. We went to a marketing conference recently where we were told, we thought we were dealing with millennials. We were wrong. Apparently we are dealing with this new generation called Generation Z. For those of you that are not familiar, look it up. These are your new clients and consumers that are coming up. And they know nothing about desktop experience. All they know is mobile. There's nothing else. And so we needed something that worked on all devices. So we began our journey. In case you're wondering what we picked, the reason we're here is we picked Appian, right? So we began in August. And what we did is we started with small steps. So we started with trying to solve problems for some of our clients. I'm going to walk you through a couple of our use cases in kind of our journey in 2015, and then I'm going to switch to our journey that began in 2016, and you'll kind of see a slight transition. So this was our onboarding of a student employee. Student employees are different from our basic employees, and the reason for that is they have to fill in lots and lots and lots of stuff. We have to know what course they're taking. We have to know what their job duties are going to be. For those of you that have lived onboarding, the student onboarding experience is the same, just a little bit worse. And the reason for that is we have to go and we have to tie into the student information system, which is kind of the thing that says Oasis. We had to tie into PeopleSoft systems, which we call GEMS and FAST. And then we had to bring this all together in a way that made sense. And of course, we wanted to make sure that the student experience was mobile when they requested a job. And we were able to do that. So what you see here and what we are illustrating is kind of an app that we used, go back one, that we used to allow our students to very, very quickly apply for a job and then get onboarded. Well, that's an example. And we did this, I think we kind of were able to knock this out in about 4 to 6 weeks in terms of being able to put all this together. We then tried something for our College of Medicine. I see Sivar here, who's our kind of our key client stakeholder and owns the product from a College of Medicine perspective. If you're a medical student and you want to see an advisor, before you would make a call to the advisor or you'd make a call to a central coordinator, I believe. And then the coordinator would look up the schedule of the person they were making an appointment for. In some cases, these advisors were physicians, so you had to look up their clinical schedule. You had to make sure they were available. All of that, the average time to just complete that was about a week. What we essentially did here was we did something interesting. We said, hey, why don't we have the students go in and make an appointment on their mobile device? And so we did that. We allowed the students to make an appointment on their mobile device. But we did something different. We said, you know what, these faculty members, they all use Outlook. And so they all kind of have their Outlook calendars synced up. Why don't we have that mobile device just like you would on OpenTable? Check the faculty member's calendar. So it went into Outlook. It saw if the faculty member was open. And then send an email. So it basically sent an email automatically to the faculty member as well as the student and put an appointment on the student and the faculty member. Again, relatively simple, but we were able to quickly show value. What happens when the student meets the faculty member, the student essentially is able to have notes associated with the faculty member. Very, very simple. But it set the stage for an app I'm going to talk about a little later in terms of how we developed our platform. What we were able to do was significantly cut the time it took for a student to see their advisor, a medical student in this case, at the same time make it convenient for the advisor because the advisor didn't have to make multiple calls. And we took out the middle person. The middle person that had to make all these calls now went away. And of course, all of this was on their phone, which the students really liked. This is my favorite. This application, which is a fourth-year lottery, for those of you that have known medical students or have dealt with them, I would say, and this is not to be biased in any way, is that the life of a fourth-year medical student is one that prepares them to be your doc. And then it gets worse because then they become a resident, right? And because the way in the fourth year of medical school, the student has to decide, what am I going to be when I grow up? And part of that is to some extent a random chance because there are a limited number of opportunities for the student, whether it's the type of specialty they're going to go to or whether it's the hospital they're going to serve in. USF has multiple affiliates across Tampa Bay, and we also have a hospital in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And so all of this used to be done through Excel spreadsheets and paper. A student would go in, they'd submit their paperwork that said, this is where I want to go. Our registrar would compile all of this into a ginormous Excel spreadsheet. I saw it was wide. And then she tried to slot them into the various slots that they were in. All of this used to take 3 months. That's a long time. And here's where it got interesting in terms of the development time. I was director of application development when we first knew this was a problem a long time ago. We tried to solve this. We tried to fix it. We tried to develop applications that would fix this. We whacked at it for a year and failed because it was that complicated. And so we spent a year of programming time. When we decided we were going to use Appian to do this, I remember one of my analysts came in and said, you're nuts. You're never going to be able to do it. This is the project that is impossible. And we said, OK, let's try. Here's what it took us to develop, 12 weeks of development. We automated the entire process. The average time to complete this process went from 3 months to 1 month. More importantly, though, the 1 month was not for the process to complete. That process takes 15 minutes. 20 minutes. Thank you, Alice. 20 minutes. Gosh. And I obviously don't do anything. But what was really fascinating is because the students had mobile devices, they could go in on a mobile device and say, this is where I want to go. Once the registrar ran her algorithm, essentially they knew where they were going to go. And so I wanted to show you kind of what the student sees. Isn't this better than having somebody fill out a form? Isn't this better than having your millennial medical student that's absolutely under pressure have to go in and fill paperwork and then chew their nails for the next 2 months while they don't know where they're going to be? And so this is what we were able to achieve, and it took us 12 weeks, which we thought was fascinating. I love this slide. It's a fake slide, but what we were also able to do, right, is to figure out where these guys got their top choices, whether they got their course, whether they didn't get their course. And what this helped us do, which was not possible before, is figure out whether the offerings that we had actually made sense for the students. And so we were able to link up kind of very quickly. And this is kind of where Appian gets really powerful for you. You can take your mobility, add it to your analytics, and then allow people to make better decisions. And the lottery actually brought this together for us. So that was us a year ago, right? That's kind of what we created a year ago. Then we looked at Appian and we said, we need to think differently. We need to think about this not just as this platform where we're going to create applications, but we're going to think about it as a platform for digitization, for digital transformation. Why was this important? Because we could reuse the same stuff that we created before. We could accelerate the amount of time it took us to create an app, and we could diminish it significantly. We could solve multiple business problems at the same time, and you're going to see that in a second. We could do collaborative planning. We could make sure, I'm going to go quickly through these so everyone can see it. We wanted to make sure that everyone got something. So if you see how we thought about Appian, we thought about it as a bunch of Lego blocks. We spent the first year developing apps. We now had a bunch of Lego blocks that we had created. We could now start building a city. And we've actually begun that process. For those of you that have to travel, you know that it's a pain. What we decided was that we were going to, we used PeopleSoft, and the travel module was one that everyone complained about. So we said maybe we can do something different. We already had a record for students because we had created it. We already had pulled in data from our PeopleSoft systems, as you saw when we were doing student onboarding. And so we said, maybe we can do something like this. Maybe we can create solutions, not apps anymore, that allowed somebody to put in a travel request, that allowed somebody to put in a cash advance, that allowed somebody to put in an expense report, and allowed somebody when they were traveling to put in their receipt that then got into PeopleSoft. And we went, we would like that. Maybe other people would as well. And so we began. Again, the average time to complete used to be 3 weeks. What we were able to do was create an app, which I'm using today actually, that allowed you to very quickly ask your boss whether you could travel, right, on your mobile device. Your boss would say yes. Once he said yes, it would go to PeopleSoft using MuleSoft, and we're going to talk about that. Ask PeopleSoft whether we had the budget, come back to the financial person, do a budget check automatically. The financial person approves. The amount gets encumbered. The traveler doesn't have to go through multiple screens. They're done. When you're on your trip, you go to your mobile device. You upload your receipts. When you're done with your trip, you send those receipts to your expense manager, or you could do it yourself if you knew your account number. And then the expense reports get packaged. They get kind of put into a PDF document, go into our document image storage, while the expenses get now unencumbered from PeopleSoft and actually expensed. All of this took us about 4 to 5 months in terms of development time. And this is kind of the view the traveler sees. Very, very different for those of you that are used to PeopleSoft from what PeopleSoft shows you. Then we said, wait a second. We created this advising application for the College of Medicine. We created, we know now that we have student new numbers and all the student information. We showed the advising application to the folks on campus. And what they said was, hey, could we do this at scale? USF has, the medical school has about 400 students. Could we do, 400, right? About 700 students. Could we do this for 40,000 students? Could we take this approach of being able to have our advisors and push that up to 40,000 students? What we did here was figure out that at USF, there were about 10 different types of people that touched our students. And so we went with what we call a case management approach for our students, where we had case managers that would then touch our students at various points in their lives at USF, but none of them knew what each was doing. And so we built, and this was done in 12 weeks, and 12 weeks is going to be a theme, and you're going to hear why when Alice talks about it. In 12 weeks, we were able to create a solution that basically did this. We were able to create a record for a student. This guy is not a millennial, but it's fake data, obviously. We were able to then look at flags that the students had, that the advisors or the resident life coordinators or their career advisors would see to bring the students back in case they needed to be touched. We then used Civitas, which is a predictive analytics tool, to feed the students that were most at risk, to create the populations of students that we were interested in talking to. And then we allowed the caseworkers to basically work the case. And all of this allowed the caseworker to very, very efficiently take care of their students. All of this can be done not just on a desktop, but on a mobile device. Because remember, our caseworkers could be resident life coordinators who sometimes are in the resident halls. They could be caseworkers out in the field. And so we want to make sure that the experience they had on the desktop was the same experience that they would have on a mobile device. Now I'm going to hand over to Alice Way, who had this onerous task because she came up with the idea, and I always think it's funny that she came up with the idea, but she now has to make this happen, to tell you how all of this was done. Alice?
Key or some big stakeholder required, basically your job was on the line if it failed. How many of you guys implemented it deciding we're going to change the way we do projects at the same time? We're going to move from waterfall to agile. No one? A couple? So surprisingly enough, that happens a lot. We think those things go together brilliantly. New product, new culture, new technology, it should go together easily, right? Surprisingly, it doesn't. And that's kind of the thing that we discovered after doing it time and time again in IT and forcing our customers to go through this whiplash of trying to teach them the culture that is IT, as well as the product that we're trying to force down their throats. And the other factor is how many have just dove in and just implemented without having a long-term roadmap for about a year's worth of planning. What features are we going to release? What kind of support are we going to provide? What kind of training? Yeah. So those are all things that we don't do well, and I would say even waterfall, for its ideal concept of planning it all out from the beginning, doesn't do very well. Agile does not do this very well. What we have started doing with our clientele is making them explain what it is that they really think they want before we start implementing. The tool that we've been using is a concept that I think Gartner is starting to talk about, which is impact mapping. The concept of a GPS roadmap rather than a very linear roadmap. Because what happens if you fall off a roadmap that's just flat? Nothing, right? You're lost your way. Whereas a GPS will tell you, okay, well, you made a wrong turn, but I'm going to adjust my directions to get you to still the same place that you wanted to get to in the first place. And so that is what impact mapping provides for us. And it ensures that everything that we're implementing for the client maps directly to a goal that's measurable. So it's no longer vague as to what value we're providing back to the institution. We also do story mapping before we start implementation, and this allows us to negotiate what actually is doable within the time frame we've decided on, and what is non-negotiable. Anything under this line here does not fall within our MVP product, meaning that the customers understand that this feature will require a phase 2. And we lock them in a room for 2 weeks. And we have a bunch of stickies, and we do recycle. But we force them to walk through their process, ask them questions about what it is that it's supposed to do now. Does it make sense to still do it now? Because you'd be amazed at the number of historical decisions that really weren't wise decisions that continue to get implemented moving forward simply because it was there in the first place, or it's too difficult to try to dig out where the origins of it was. So in this process, we actually go through that. Our first Appian product that we built was a change advisor app. which you would think is very simple, but it took 2 weeks to actually get a signature, 3 signatures signed on a sheet of paper and hand it into someone that would be able to change it in the system. And there were multiple people that had to see it and nod and agree that this is okay. You would think they were signing their lives away instead of just asking for advisors to be changed. We forced them to think through their process and say, who really needs a sign and who just needs to know that it's there? We do an agile one-on-one training with our customers so that they understand the culture before they even dive in. This makes sure that they understand the rituals and the terminology that we're going to be using with them. So it's not like, what is a sprint? I don't like to run. What is MVP? What is MMP? What does it mean to have a review? Why is it important for me to show up? And for those who have been using Agile, have you witnessed any of these before in your organization? They're quite common. We've had quite a few people that have actually identified and saying, well, you know, Agile doesn't work for us because of XYZ reason. And it's really not that Agile doesn't work. It was probably implemented poorly. And the other thing we've identified is, well, actually, how many people here are actually Agile shops or use Agile for their implementations? Yeah. So how many of you guys have tierages for your Scrum Masters and your product owners?
Say that one more time.
How many of you guys have tierages of maturity for your Scrum Masters and product owners? Tiered out. Yeah. Because if you've ever sent your people to get training, it's a 2-3 day training, and then once they're out of that, miraculously, they're a Scrum Master, they're a product owner. But the reality of it is, not every Scrum Master and product owner is created equal. They have different types, and you should treat them accordingly. So if it's a junior, why would you assign them to the most difficult project that's going to be your job, put your job on the line, as opposed to a senior? These are things that I know are no-brainers, but we actually did this, and I'm sure a lot of other people have done it too. And so I just want to walk through and explain kind of some things you may want to think about as food for thought of why certain projects fail that have nothing necessarily even to do with the technology. Is your culture fit correct? Now, let me get into the technology front of things. A lot of ERPs that have been built in the early 90s and any time, and maybe even some early 2000s, aren't necessarily built to be agile. And so when you try to use agile methodology with an ERP like PeopleSoft, it becomes very difficult because they're not built to be rapid. They're not built to be iterative. It's all or nothing oftentimes. And so what we've been challenged with at most universities is we've inherited these big clunky systems that probably haven't been updated in I don't even know how long. Or even custom grown applications that have turned into so many different things that it shouldn't have been built to do, that we don't know how to unravel that. And we have used, what we found great value in Appian is to use that as a layover on top to make the user experience for the people that only touch upon the system sometimes a very user-friendly system that pulls in all the data into one place. Sidney mentioned our case management system. Prior to implementing that product, we had our advisors looking at 4 computer screens to get the same kind of information about a student, just to start the conversation about how can we help them. With this product that we built, they have one screen that tells them what they need to know, and they don't need to go log into our banner system. They don't need to log into our PeopleSoft system to find out these kind of information. So and we were actually able to give them something hands-on to test every 2 weeks. After a review, we would have a user testing session right after. And so they actually saw a product and played with it every time we released something. And so if there was something wrong, they were immediately able to give feedback, and the dev team took it back and re-planned, if they had to, certain feature sets. This is something you can't do often with those really clunky ERPs. So the other thing that I really want to touch upon is, yes, we have mobile apps, but do they talk to each other? How many of you guys have more than 5 mobile apps? Do they talk to each other in terms of data, or are they completely different use cases? So like one's for requesting for a meeting, another one's requesting for a salary increase, right? Well, the value of a platform is it should all really lace together. And I have to say that this credit we give to, he was actually right here, Mike, who helped us architect this platform mentality as well into our mobile platform. So not only is our desktop version of Appian interlaced so that if you log in as whatever your profile is, for example, faculty, I can look at the progress of my tenure promotion as well as my travel. So right here, this is actually some images of our faculty profile that we've started building. And it's all stuff that you can use for CVs. This is a huge deal for our faculty. But down here are our quick links, which we're adding more and more to, have nothing to do with the faculty profile specifically, but it definitely matters to me if I'm traveling. And so I don't have to go into a completely separate instance of this app just to find out about my travel. And so, again, the push that we're reusing data and everywhere we can to make it user-friendly for our users. And we're hoping that they don't have to feel like it's 5 different instances of Appian that they're looking at whenever they log into mobile, but just one. And to me, it feels like a new-aged version of Portal, but much more usable and much more easier to navigate around. So I think the big piece that we talk about a lot is when we talk with our customers is, don't worry, we'll come back to you even though we didn't build everything we wanted. With this product, we're able to build out something that's MVP for them to start using, figure out if it works for them, and then say, I have a list of features that I want to be added now. And because it doesn't take us a year or 2 years to develop the desktop version and the mobile version, we can come back to them. And they have learned that they don't have to try to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, in for requirements every time they talk to us. They actually make strategic decisions on what do I need now and what can I do, what can I have later. And so this is just kind of a screenshot or some images of our happy team. These are our customers in a zero planning, where we're doing story mapping for, I believe this was our travel app, actually. And these are our teams that are super happy. Some of these are the same developers that Sidney talked about that were burnt out and ready to leave. They now see value in the things they're building. As well as get to talk to the customer and clients and get their feedback as well. That's it.
We have to take questions. Yeah.
So this single app where it is giving the view of all the 5 different apps in the example, is this just a view only, or you can actually work on all the workflows that are created in fact?
You can all work on them all.
So were they created like a second snapshot of it, or were they referencing to already existing workflow?
It's referring to existing workflow. Yeah, we can actually show you it on the mobile phone. It's just we're pushing a lot of things production this next couple of weeks, and we just upgraded to 17.1. And so we're not confident enough to show you live, but we're more than welcome to show you on the side if you want to see and what we've done. The travel app actually is one of our really exciting ones that we're going to be we rolled out to a beta group right now.
Yeah.
I noticed that you mentioned that you were going from 400 named users to
40.
5,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we're not going. So the 400 names. So right now we probably have 2,000 or 3,000 users that actually are using the system. Okay. We expect to be 40,000 probably in July. That will be closed when we open it up to all the students. We've load tested. Appian's in the cloud, so for those of you that are not in the cloud, go to the cloud because that will allow you to kind of scale very, very quickly. In terms of, we use MuleSoft on the back end, which again are what we would call a service-based web bus. So we're pretty confident as we scale up that we'll be in good shape. And I have my architect, Dave, who will still hopefully be here in August when we go up to 40,000. Do you have a specific question around our concerns?
Yeah. So it was not that you need to like increase the student fees a lot or something.
Oh, in terms of the cost of the platform?
Like, huge investment, or was it like?
So I think the way we look at Appian is it's a platform, and so it doesn't matter to us kind of the number of users as they increase. Our costs actually go down.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
Actually, a question for you.
Sure.
So you raised a very important point where when the OS is upgraded, the mobile OS is upgraded, or device are upgraded, the more controlled way of writing the app, you have to upgrade that within a year's time or whenever the upgrade happens. How is Appian taking care of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're constantly updating our own mobile application independently of when we release software, like 17.2 that's just coming out. So as new security updates and vulnerabilities become exposed and we patch them, or new device capabilities come out that we want to add in, or we just add in new actual visual display components, we'll release a new version of our app into the App Store. And so users can then download that on their own and ensure that on the actual application itself, the native application, that's always staying current. The actual applications themselves that you folks are working through Agile to constantly update, those will automatically get pushed regardless of what version of the application you're on. So we're trying to take the burden off of you folks, of most of you here, 99% are not in the software business, right? And so we're trying to take away that burden from you folks and put it on us. And then that way, as long as you update your mobile applications like you do every other one, you'll ensure that they stay future-proof and current.
So what if there is some change required at the server level or at the Appian installation level?
You said what if they changed it at the server or Appian installation level?
Say some of the changes which are done at the OS level, at the mobile or the device level, updating the app, just taking care of, let's say, 90% of the issues, there would be certain things. You may have to change it at the server level, at the Appian installation level. If you're in cloud, I can understand, you'll say we are anyways upgrading.
Right.
But what if the customer is on-prem?
Well, that's a good point, and I'd stop it after this question, but we can come talk afterwards. We're constantly evolving our platform, so how quickly that you folks actually upgrade it, that's up to you, and that would be a concern. But from a technology standpoint, we'll ensure that our platform and the mobile device will stay current.
So for your mobile application, sorry, last question.
Okay.
Do you need to do the design for your to do the mobile UI design?
No,
Or
no. You design once, it just magically works. Go ahead, Al.
I'm sure there's certain reusable pieces that you have to kind of strategize around, so the architects that we have would kind of review the work so the UI is consistent. But at its core, it's you build once and it should be usable for all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have other questions, just come up and you can ask me directly.